I'm Rita Chelly at Ontario Today, the small-town doctor who says scrap the gun registry, the emergency room physician in Toronto who says no, it is saving lives. In medicine, in politics, in your community, this gun registry is dividing people. Tell us where you stand and why after the news. The long gun registry and how it is carving up loyalties in this province between cities and small towns, inside political parties, even doctors. In a big city like Toronto, the police chief is clear.
It's an important public safety tool, and we need it, and we're hoping that Parliament will allow us to keep it.
The federal Conservatives do want it to go, and they may end up getting help from a surprising place. New Democrat MPs from Northern Ontario. Coming up, a doctor in rural Ontario who says the gun registry is nothing more than a political placebo. He has tried to use it, and he says the best thing to do is scrap it. Then a trip to a hospital in downtown Toronto to a doctor who leads a trauma team. From domestic assaults to suicides, she believes the gun registry is saving lives. We also want to hear from you. If you have had first-hand experience with this gun registry, give us a call. This is the toll-free number, 1-888-817-8995. Also on the program today, an amazing discovery right in the heart of Toronto, a new kind of bee. We're going to meet the man who captured this little marvel in a glass jar just before 1 o'clock today. Where you live in Ontario may play a big role in how you feel about the long gun registry. Consider how it is dividing the federal New Democrats. The future of the registry is actually hanging on the choices of a handful of NDP MPs. The Conservatives, as you know, have made a move to eliminate the long gun registry, and on second reading of that bill, 12 New Democrat MPs sided with the federal Conservatives, 6 of them from Northern Ontario. We actually have requested interviews with all of those MPs, spoken to all their offices. It turns out the Northern MPs are all traveling to Sudbury today. They are meeting with the federal industry minister on a different file. But it's clear that these New Democrats are still weighing their options, thinking about what they will do in that final vote. It's coming up on September the 22nd. Here's an example. Glenn Thibault's office in Sudbury saying that he is reading the report by the Mounties. So again, 6 Northern Ontario MPs are undecided. You can contrast that with their leader, Jack Layton, and his wife. Both represent urban ridings in Toronto, and they do support the registry. So what's going on inside the NDP is actually a pretty good window into how, well, where you're from could actually influence your own personal verdict on the long gun registry. Our first guest has tried to use it, and he has not been impressed. Dr. Osvaldo Ramirez is the Chief of Emergency at the Stevenson Memorial Hospital, and we've reached him in Alliston, Ontario. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Rita.
When did you start paying attention to the long gun registry?
Well, I started back in 2004. I had just finished my residency, and I came to Alliston as an emergency physician. And the first time I tried to use the registry, it totally failed on me.
What? Can you give us the circumstances that you tried to use it?
It was after a domestic violence incident, and the police officer had brought the patient in. Didn't know whether there was other circumstances, and I asked about firearms, and he said that he didn't know. So I thought, okay, well, I know that there's a number, the 1-800 number, and of course I called, and because it was after hours, couldn't get an answer that way. So I asked him, then how can we go about accessing this information? And he said he would call his chief, and they would try and locate, and I interviewed the patient. The patient said that there were firearms that she knew of, and when they checked the registry, there were no firearms. Actually, the individual didn't even have a firearms license.
So what did you do with that? 'Cause it sounds like you're getting 2 bits of information. So what was the resolution?
Well, the resolution was that the individual was apprehended regardless. They did get a warrant for search. They didn't find anything. but there was, of course, the concern from the patient as far as whether there were firearms present. And now this was before I had actually decided to go and become a firearms owner. I'd been a staunch Liberal supporter beforehand, and then decided to go and see what's this whole sport about.
Okay, is it because you were living in a small town?
Yes, and as a rural physician, you get to meet a lot of locals, and everybody likes to fish and hunt in the area, and of course the interest gets piqued, and try something new, and something that I hadn't known anything about in the past.
Give me your assessment today, then, in 2010, about this long gun registry.
Well, I have not been able to find one useful reason for it, really, other than registering these firearms.
You mean the argument that it's we license our cars, so what's the downside?
No, licensing is one thing, registration is another thing. When you go through the hoops, and they are quite extensive to get a firearms license, there's an interview process. The RCMP call you. They called my wife, my colleagues, because we had to provide reference numbers. And of course, when my wife went for her license, they called me and asked if there were any concerns. Her previous employer, and it's a really thorough background check to get the license. Now, once you get the license, then you can get a firearm. Once you get the firearm, then you have to register it. So the thing is, the long gun registry doesn't provide any additional safety as far as the requirements with licensing, which is totally, it's not even an issue with Bill 391 that's coming up, because this is only for the registration of the firearms.
So, I mean, you gave us the one example of using it, trying to use it with that one patient. Have you had any other experience with it?
Oh yes. Afterwards, when I found out that the Ottawa Citizen had a website borrowed from the RCMP that says, you can see what kinds of firearms are available in your community using their postal code, I thought I'd, play around with it and check it out, and I knew that I had certain firearms that should show up on that, and they didn't. So I thought, oh, well, that's not very good. So just to, further check things, I asked a local police officer who is a friend and also a patient, would you run a check on my firearms and see if everything is there that's registered to my name shows up? And sure enough, he did, and this was just in January. And lo and behold, when I was going through all the certificates, there was one firearm that I had a certificate for. I had registered, but it didn't show up on my registry printout.
It wasn't there.
No, it wasn't.
So this obviously causes you to question the efficacy, even of
It's not the efficacy; it's the validity of the firearms registry at this point.
What do you think is the right solution? Should it be eliminated?
Well, at this point, there's no use for it. It's useless. In medicine, we have this adage that if what you're doing is working, keep doing it. If what you're doing is not working, stop doing it. If you don't know what to do, don't do anything. In this case, I think, it's not working. We should scrap it, cut our losses. It's been almost a $2 billion fiasco. And maybe reassign those scarce funds to things that we know that do work, like frontline policing, mental health. If we had just, supposedly they say $4 million that's going to be saved for the gun registry could be allocated to mental health. I think that would, really show hard numbers that would save Canadian lives.
It's interesting, even from your part of the world, let's say, because there are emergency room physicians, and we'll be speaking to someone who has a contrary view saying this does work. So how do we make sense of that?
Well, I would love to listen to somebody to show me how it actually does work to save lives, because again, the registry has nothing to do with the licensing part, and registration of firearms is just basically, it provides a shopping list for hackers and thieves if they ever get into the registry, which RCMP itself has shown that has happened.
Can you ask me another question? I mean, how much conversation is there around your hospital in Alliston or in your community about the long gun registry?
There is quite a lot, believe it or not. Again, paramedics, police officers that come in with patients all the time, and even our nurses here, because some of them, they're married to hunters or firearms enthusiasts, and some of our lady nurses are actually avid hunters and shooters.
So what's the conversation? Is it everybody kind of saying it should be eliminated, or is there a debate?
Unfortunately, here you'll get the consensus that it's a useless tool, and it has no merit to keep it around. And we get that from just about everybody. I haven't found anyone here that supports it, unfortunately.
Well, it's really interesting to hear your perspective. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me call.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye now.